Welcome to First Presbyterian Church in Spirit Lake.
Friday. What is that?
Friday.
I feel like that's from like a racetrack.
That might be. I'm not cool enough to know anything about racing.
Made it at night.
Are the Pratts on today? They could tell us
Becky?
about. Hey there, Becky. They could tell us about the current state of racing. They're starting, aren't they? Some racing.
Yeah, I think they raced around the empty track last weekend.
Yeah.
This weekend, I feel like Memorial Day is usually a big race.
Yeah. Right.
Coca-Cola 600, maybe.
Is there if
No
someone's
bike
with us
racing yet.
today who knows about the big race? Hey, Amy.
Hi, Mrs. Keeper.
It's good to see you. Hey, by the way, Amy, I got to tell you, your amazing experiments were a big hit in the Guecki household. We tuned in not only to watch you do them, but we watched them as reruns over and over and over again. The elephant toothpaste one was a big hit.
What?
Yeah, Amy did these awesome experiments for
Hi, Dawn.
the
Hi, Karen.
preschoolers.
Nice.
Yeah, she makes us look like wannabes.
Yeah, well, that seems more than fair.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we are wannabes. Hi, Carolyn.
Hey, Caroline.
Oh, it's not hard to look like what you are.
Hope everyone's Friday is good. Friday?
It is Friday. We
Friday.
just said that. How many times is Friday?
No, what day it is has just become a non-factor in my life.
Hi, Lorene. It's good to see you.
Hi, Lorene.
I think I hear that there for flea market people, there's like minimal flea market out at Vic's Corner. But the one at the Dickinson County Fairgrounds is not happening, I think I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong, people in the comments.
Jane said something about farmer's market, and I just said, why don't you just go lick beds at the emergency room?
Well, that's a nuanced response.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Farmer's market? Farmer's market? Yeah, there's no chance you'd catch anything there. Come on.
I think the governor opened that. That was the first wave of things opened were farmers markets.
Well, yeah, that doesn't mean...
I'm just saying that they've had the longest time to be safe, right? If only it worked that way. All right, well, you did not tune in to hear us rambling about things we have no expertise in.
Under the best of circumstances, I don't really think farmers markets are my scene.
Okay, now you're changing the topic of conversation, and I completely agree with you. No,
Or
that's
flea market.
It's just
I'm
not.
a-
Now, when what's the name of the junk store like where he kept getting all the stuff in next to it? So there was the farmers market, and then you got that building with like all of the random damaged product store. Anybody help me out with the name here? You know what I'm talking about?
I have zero idea what
so
you're
my
talking
wife
about.
would go buy all of this healthy food, and I would go next door looking for like the secret treasure of stuff that was damaged in shipping or whatever. Or somebody, what's the name? There was a name.
In Spirit Lake.
Yeah, at the fairgrounds.
No. I can't help you.
Okay, well, people in comments aren't.
I avoid all of that stuff.
All right.
And that's not a value judgment. If anyone enjoys it, more power to you. Not for this guy.
Oh, remind me on Monday, everybody. I've got something very interesting to share with you about truckload sale. Thank you, Becky.
Of course, Becky knows that. Good work, Becky.
I have something
Monday,
very
question mark.
Oh yeah, Monday question mark.
How many of you, we don't know what to do for Monday. We're still trying to figure that out. Do you have anything?
I think we're fishing on Monday.
Okay.
And by we, I mean my father-in-law is coming, and I'll.
Let's just, should we assume we're not having Bible study Monday?
Yeah, Lorene, exactly. Thank you. That's my point.
Okay, friends, at this point, we will confirm this through email and we'll mention it Sunday in the live portion. But at this point, we will plan not to have this meeting on Monday. We'll take the holiday and reconvene on Tuesday. All right. Well, with that said, let's get started. We're in a dark room, so I have to cheat to read very comfortably. We're in verse 3. Again, just a word. Yesterday, we had some kind of theological ground that we covered, the atoning sacrifice. And now we move to verse 3 here in chapter 2. Now by this we may be sure that we know him, if we obey his commandments. Now, Michael, again, whatever the connection of this book is with the Gospel of John, this is vintage gospel stuff. Mm-hmm. We know that we know him because we obey. Mm-hmm. Obedience is always for John the extension of knowledge. And knowledge is relational knowledge. It's not that we know about him. Mm-hmm. It's that we know him personally. And if we know him personally, by definition, that affects our life.
Yeah, one of the strongest criticisms of John's letters as a whole is that he focuses too much on the idea of knowledge. And the criticism is that if you focus all of your faith on knowing things, you'll be no earthly good to anyone. And this is the antidote to that. This is sprinkled throughout these books, Clint. If we know, that's great, but that knowledge is embodied and lived out to the extent to which it changes our behavior in the world. So a person who is not conformed to the image of the sacrificial Son of God, we had this language yesterday of the atoning sacrifice. If our lives don't in some way reflect sacrificial obedience, we have not understood rightly.
Yeah, and in fairness, this isn't just a John thing. I mean, this is pretty typical of most of the New Testament, that you will bear fruit, that if you're planted in him, you will grow, you will bear fruit. And the reverse is true also. Whoever says, I have come to know him, but does not obey his commandments, is a liar, and in such a person, the truth does not exist. But whoever obeys his word truly, in this person, the love of God has reached perfection. By this, we may be sure that we are in him. Whoever says, I abide in him, ought to walk as he walks. So several verses there. But essentially, the Bible is not particularly understanding of hypocrisy. The word hypocrisy in Greek means to play a part. It's a word that means that essentially you're an actor or an actress. And so to say one thing and do another, particularly when the thing you say is I follow Christ, but the thing you do is not a thing that you do following Christ, the Bible has a significant problem with that. And John here lays that out. Whoever says I come to know him, but doesn't obey him, in other words, doesn't follow him, well, that person's not telling the truth. They're not being honest. They're literally living a lie.
Yeah, Clint, this great emphasis in the New Testament isn't made up. It comes directly from the words of Jesus. In fact, we know that a lot of Jesus's arguments with the religious leaders of his day were because they claimed something to be true of themselves, but they didn't embody it. This famous accusation that Jesus makes, that you are whitewashed tombs. You've made yourself look pretty, but you're dead on the inside. And so for all of the New Testament writers reflecting back on who Jesus was, the thing that made Jesus effective, or in other words, the thing that made his sacrifice truly meaningful, was the fact that he didn't just talk the talk, he literally lived and embodied it. And if we as Christians seek to live in the way of Christ, words alone will never suffice. We cannot just say things and that therefore make change. We, as those who encounter the living one, will reflect in our living selves that reality.
And it's interesting, friends, we live in this era in which we have a lot of freedom, or at least people feel a lot of freedom to define themselves, to apply whatever label I might want to put on myself, intelligent or hardworking or conservative or liberal or whatever it is that I want to believe to be true about myself. We live in an era where we think that's a matter of mental reasoning. In other words, we think because I believe it to be true, it then is true. And I think where the Bible offers an antidote to that is the Bible will essentially challenge us to say, what you do is really what you believe. The way that you live is really the clearest indicator of what you truly think and believe. It is the barometer. It's the best gauge of what you believe. And for John here, if you say you believe something but your life doesn't reflect that, then it's very questionable how deeply you truly believe that.
Clint, would you agree with this? I think one of the most challenging words, is a small word, but I think incredibly challenging in this selection, is anyone who obeys his word. We don't really use the word obey in our common conversation very much. The idea that we step into the jet stream that someone else creates, that we respond to someone else's expectation, is very anti-American. We don't conceive of obeying very often. We talk about our coworkers as colleagues. We talk about how we are working together. The idea of obeying is just not culturally resonant, and yet that is a central litmus test for the faith.
Yeah, and it's interesting that so much of the contention right now is related to people telling other people what they should do. You can't make me wear a mask, or you can't tell me if I can or can't open my business, or if I can go to the beach, or if the church has to be open or can't be open. That we as Americans, this idea of complete independence and autonomy and authority, we don't react well to being given instructions. And yet the New Testament word, probably more prevalent in the Old Testament, but continues in the New Testament, is obedience. That our part of our task as Christians is to follow, to obey, to be faithful to the instructions of Jesus Christ, the things that he's given us to do, and the things he's called us, the ways in which he's called us to live. And you know, it is relatively simple for John. If you can check the boxes of what it looks like to be faithful, then you believe in Christ. And if you don't check those boxes, then you have to strongly consider where you're getting your marching orders.
I'm going to measure my words here because I don't want to make this into a trailer or a promotion for Sunday's sermon, but this is relevant in this context. The reason why obeying makes sense to the Christian is because we firmly put our stake in the ground and say that Jesus Christ is Lord, capital L. He is the Son of God. So when Jesus says something, it's not another option on the shelf of options to choose from. When Jesus calls us to faith and forgiveness and reconciliation, self-sacrifice, when he says, carry your cross, when Jesus says that, those aren't maxims for living that you put in a short book on the self-help aisle. Those are gateways and invitations to the world as it actually is. That's the Creator God telling you, this is the way to life, for I am the door. I'm the gatekeeper. So once again, I don't want to tune into Sunday for the sermon to hear some of these themes worked out more broadly, but it's worth saying here, the reason why obeying makes sense to the Christian is because for us, it's not a few options that deserve chose between. It's because Christ represents that which is true.
And I think it's important, Michael, that we connect this with what has just been said about forgiveness. This isn't to say that Christians who miss the mark are somehow outside of Christ. This is talking about those places in our life where we choose not to be obedient.
Yep.
The Bible fully understands that we are all going to fall short. We're trying to love our enemies, and it's a struggle. We lose our temper. We have these moments of sin, and we will continue to do that as broken people, and there is grace for that. I think what John has in mind here are those moments when we say, well, Jesus calls me to do this, but I really want to do this. And we follow our own path instead. And I think we want to be cautious here that we don't leave the impression that John is somehow indicating that anytime we fall short of obedience, we're outside of Christ. That's not, I think that's not his point here. His point is that as we follow Christ, we will be constantly trying to put more and more of our life's work and our life's direction under the guidance of Jesus.
Well, and let's just finish this last verse, because that's exactly where John goes here, Clint. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. This is one of those sentences that is easy to read and has depth beyond imagining. What does it mean to live as Jesus lived? And quite frankly, there are more books written on this than you could read in a lifetime. But Clint, it's not about some sort of cosmic scorecard where you're trying to get the tally on the good side of the list. That you made that point really well. What this is about is an invitation to a completely new set of values that your life is organized around. When we're called to live as Christ lived, we're called to be transformed literally from the way we think to the way that we act, to the way that we conceive and operate in the world, how we relate. All of this is shaped by this, because it's not moralism in the behavior sense. It is heart transformation, which changes everything.
And I wonder if there's a couple of theological jargon church words that help here. We use in the church the words justification and sanctification. Justification is that idea that we are forgiven in Christ. So when we understand that Christ's grace cleanses us from our sin, we are justified. And then there is what's called sanctification, which essentially, Michael, is everything that comes next. It's the process by which we continue to follow Christ. It's the process by which we learn to subject our will to his will. It's the process by which we learn to give up our patterns that aren't helpful and try to live into his that are helpful and holy and righteous. And sanctification is that lifelong journey that really has no end. There's no moment where we're done with that, because there's always the gap between us and Jesus is so immense that there's always room for our growth. No matter how faithful we might ultimately become, there continues to be things for us to work on. And so John, as he will in almost every time we read him, gives us a great challenge here, almost poetic words, but when you stop and think about them, just a depth and a richness that I think is really helpful.
Well, welcome to everybody who's jumped in and joined us in the course of the conversation. Glad that you're here. Deanna,
Hi, Deanie.
Barb, good to see you.
Nancy. Yeah, thanks all. So at this point, again, just a restatement for those who may have gotten here a little late, and we'll put word out. We do not plan to meet Monday. We will check back in with you on Tuesday. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Hope you get some rest and relaxation in it, whatever that means, in a time that we're probably doing a lot of that. But we hope something in it is meaningful for you. Church Sunday morning, I think...
It'd be a little late to send in pictures, I think.
Yeah, that would probably mostly be done. So we hope to have you with us on Sunday, and we're glad that you were with us today. And if not before, we will gather back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for that,